Hi. We're doing something a little different this time. I'm in Las Vegas, and I'm sitting in the control room with Zoe Thrall, who during my professional career has always been referred to as the best studio manager in America. She currently is the managing director here at the studio in the Palms, but she has a very illustrious history going all the way back to being in Little Steven's band, the Disciples of Stoll, as a musician. Then she went on to become an assistant engineer and engineer at the power station under Tony Bon Jovi. She had a decision to make at that point, and she got the call to go to another legendary studio, the Hit Factory, under the leadership of Eddie Germano, another industry legend. Unfortunately, the Hit Factory went the way of so many New York studios, which was it became a huge co-op, condo, hotel type of environment. And Zoe was faced with many decisions. After many phone calls from the Maloof brothers who own the Palms Casino Hotel, they convinced her to come out. And she saw that they were committed to building a state-of-the-art recording studio, the best in Las Vegas and possibly the best on the West Coast. And she took on the challenge, and now she is the manager, director, and studio operations manager for the Palms Casino Hotel recording studio. So without further ado, the best recording studio manager in America, Zoe Thrall.
Thank you, John. I don't know if I'll live up to that specifically.
Well, Rose Mann might have something to say about that.
Rose will definitely have something to do with it.
First question that I have, which is, again, one of my things, is how are the interns getting the training today? What have we done by all of this progress and the efficiency and immediate gratification? To me, it's had to have negatively impacted a young up-and-coming person who wants to get involved in this industry, and the real training they get as compared to the training that you and I got. When we came up, you were lucky if you got to sit at a console or operate a tape deck the first 2 years you were an intern.
That's right.
It's not like that anymore.
No, it isn't. But you may be surprised to hear, or maybe not, that still in the larger facilities, now there's much fewer of us that exist in the world, but still in these larger facilities, I think the intern / entry-level position is still treated very similarly than even when we came up. So, at least I can speak for our studio, the first 6 months you are not in the room. You are learning other things, how to treat a client, kind of the bedside manner side of it, setups, protocol, paperwork, all that detail that kind of, it sets up the environment that an artist is used to. We can't have like a young kid coming into a room like a bull in a china shop. So we have to train. We break down. We have very good recording schools now. There's a handful of them. But at the same time, once they come out of there, we break them down and start them all over. I always tell young people coming into this environment, think of this like grad school. You went to school. Now we're continuing your education, but you still have an enormous amount to learn. So now that's the larger studios. Like I said, there's not that many of us left anymore. So that training can't happen with many, many people. Pop music, urban music these days is very songwriter driven. So the songwriters, that process emanates with the songwriter and eventually ends up in the studio. Well, no, there was no one helping the songwriter. There was no kid learning. There was no engineer. They're doing it all in Logic on their laptops.
There was one other thing that we had touched on before, and you and I have been down the road of being producers and trying to utilize our resources to bring along new talent that we believed in.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't had much success with it. I'm curious. So there's two parts of that. The irony of the fact that when we were coming up, we had product and didn't have any way to get anyone on the phone to do anything with it. The most frustrating thing in the world. I can't get them on the phone. I can't get an appointment or whatever. Mm-hmm. And now we've come this way to be to the point where we can almost get anybody on the phone through one way or another, because we've learned to know so many people and do so many incredible artists during our time, that I find that very ironic. So I was wondering what you thought. What are your reasons for why it's not happening? Why we haven't been able to make that connection?
Probably for us, and I did these productions with my husband Pat. We would find these bands that are just so talented, good songs, good chemistry, great singers. Um, we were good at making the records. We weren't good at that next step, like you were saying, and we did have connections, but we just weren't. That was not what we did. I guess we needed someone else that was more connected, had that way of promoting that we don't really have. And on top of that, many times we would get, you sit down with a new band, for example, and you explain the process to them, how this is in the long haul. Even if we get a record deal, that's just the beginning. That's not the ultimate goal. That's the beginning. And they all say yes, 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 and the band's all grooving together and they all love each other, and you find by the time you finish the record they hate each other, or this one wants to quit, or one's getting married or whatever, and the whole thing falls apart. No matter how much we talk to them about, you have to be in it for the long term.
Do you think you spoiled your artist
Oh yes.
and brought them to expect more and not have to work as hard for it?
Very much. Come on, they were in the top studios. We would bring top producers in, the top engineers. They had A plus process to make the record.
I mean, I view that as
fed well. They accommodate the whole thing.
So the point of this was, in case there are managers or artists that are watching this,
yes,
to just remember that it's hard work, and it's a 24/7 commitment, and
yeah,
you got to be willing to put it all in, like we would be.
It has to be.
I would hold nothing back from my artist if I believed in them.
They have to go into it believing, and in the deepest part of their soul, thinking this is the most important thing in my life. It has to be, outside of everything else, and I'm not kidding. It has to be more important than everything in your life. The ones that make it understand that.
But yeah, I'm gonna try it one more time myself. So moving down the road a piece, since we're talking about that, where are we going?
I think we're going to see more of this songwriter-driven environment. But I'm also seeing a change in that there's more of a resurgence of bands, players now too, which I'm encouraged by. Let's hope that trend continues. We'll see.
I have feelings about how I don't feel that we're serving the real purpose anymore. To me, it used to be that a producer was the guy that really had to go in there and really draw it out of you, really show you how to really improve. And that was really important to me. It's still important to me.
Yep.
How do you feel about the way they make records today?
It just is what it is. I mean, I know it's a cop-out to say that, but depends on the genre, I suppose. Pop music, like I said, is more songwriter-driven. When you get more into the organic side of music, the jazz and even rock, that's more producer-driven, artist-driven. So it's just a sign of the times. This is how we make records now. Also, some of these tools, I mean, we would have killed to have some of these tools back in the day. So I think it's a wonderful time to be making records. The technology is amazing. There's so many options now. Some people get drawn into that and lose sight of the long-term goal. But having said that, all these tools are at your disposal. The manufacturers, the software companies are on fire right now. It's sounding better and better. Um, it's a great time to be making records.
I feel that there's a lot lacking. That one-to-one relationship with an artist has almost disappeared. I mean, I even see the way the kids make the records upstairs. I mean, it used to be. This is what I wanted to talk to you about. When we used to talk about going into the studio, it could be 2 months,
Oh,
3 months.
yes. Oh, boy, yeah.
I mean, the action, the vibe took place in the studio. The energy, songs were written in there. The drama took place. The electrical buzz in the air, all of that doesn't even really seem to exist anymore. And that was to me was part of the magic of what we did. And now I've got artists that are turning in 1-2 songs a
Mm-hmm.
day. It's I mean, they even made dance records slower than that, even
Yeah.
though there was a heavy turnover on 12
Well,
inches
those
in
were
the day.
highly produced, those dance records. Are you
Yeah.
kidding me? Um, it's budget driven.
Hmm.
That's the reason. Well, let's back up. If the records aren't selling as much, then the label's not going to put out. And let's talk about label type records. They're not going to invest as much into it, which limits the time they can work on it. And there you go. You have to work fast. They have to be more prepared going into the studio, uh, having flushed out the songs and the approach and what kind of sound they're going for, even before they come in here. In the older days, we worked all that stuff out in the studio. That's the difference. The budgets just aren't there anymore.
Do you feel that with this new methodology in recording that there's an atmosphere that's missing?
Yes, because you're going to get. It's just different. Not that one way is necessarily better than the other, but you're going to get a different result. Records do sound different today than they did back then.
Which I want to touch on as
Yeah.
well.
Because a producer driven record, I mean, there's nothing like having that collaboration between an artist and a producer. There's nothing like it. They bounce ideas off each other. I always tell young bands, they think they can come in and produce themselves. Okay, some can, but the best records, the best rock records that are made, have a producer on them. The Beatles had a producer. U2 has a producer. You know what I mean? The best bands had someone to work off of. There's a lot of enormous amount of trust there. And if that chemistry works, then you get magic.
I think one of your artists, the Imagine Dragons, I think
Mhm.
that kid's really great.
Oh, Dan Reynolds, yeah.
And I think he's putting all that together basically himself. He's got
Well,
great ears.
He's got great. He's enormously talented, but the whole band is.
Mm.
They all collaborate on the songwriting. I think he starts it in some cases. Wayne, the guitar player, will start some, but in the end, they all collaborate. But they work with songwriters too. They don't just do it on their
I
own.
think everybody is now.
Yeah.
It's
I mean,
called the collaboration.
they have huge hits, and some of those hits are collaborations with some
Which
of the
is
big.
something that we could discuss because I had that discussion about just the monetary threat that these kids have to deal with today, that even in the publishing and the digital distribution, you've got sometimes 3, 4, 5 people splitting publishing out of these writer groups that take place. Most of them, I believe, in Los Angeles. I think there's a lot in Nashville as well.
Yes.
The pressure on making music today all the way around is like, because we talk about 360 deals and that and the playing and the merchandising, and that's where the money is for these kids getting out there and doing it, which is a good thing.